they're going to explain what you're going to be doing today, talk a little bit about their experience with Lego. Super excited about that. Let's give them a hand and let's do this.
Thank you, Caleb.
All right, all right. Hey, so how many people here are fidgeters? Pretty much everybody. See, when I was in school, especially in the elementary, the junior high, I used to get in trouble because I always fidgeted with my pens. I fidgeted with whatever was on my desk. I fully expect you guys to be fidgeting while we're talking, and that's okay. So I just want to kind of give you a little bit of permission, but I also ask a little bit, if you could just kind of pay attention. We're only going to do about 10 or 15, maybe 20 minutes at the very, very most, and we're going to talk about some of our experience on Lego Masters, and then we're going to explain what you're doing, but more importantly, why you're doing it. And it's the why that makes all of what we're going to do and talk about give you the ability to be able to talk and have and build that relationship, which is what Zach and I have basically attempted to do through the use of Lego. See, our whole experience on Lego Masters was stemmed out of Melissa, who's my wife, obviously Zach's mom, out of Mom and I's ability to attempt to try to connect with our kids and the things that they love. And so we found with my very first child, he loved fishing. That was Micah. So I spent a lot of time on the boat fishing. Zach here decided that he wanted to be a creative artist, but instead of doing paints and other stuff, he decided to use the medium of Lego. And this stuff up here, if you haven't seen it, you're welcome to come up. This is stuff that Zach has created. He's got a couple of flowers. He's got a couple of different buildings and things. But the whole point of this is, who is telling your story? Who's actually the one that's telling your story that you're going to have for the rest of your life? And our intent here was basically, as we developed Mom and I, as we developed our relationship with our kids, is to make sure that we were being intentional about telling our story. So we ended up going and we started a display. We got a phone call. I got a phone call from Lego Masters, and they said, hey, would you like to apply to be on the show? And I'm like, yeah, I think this is a joke. I don't think anybody actually is going to ask us to be on the show. Called Zach up. He said, well, we'll pursue it. We'll figure out what's going on. Long interview process, going through all these different questions and all these things. And every time we go through one gate, Zach and I look at each other like, no, we're probably not going to make it to the next one. We're probably not going to make it to the next one. And all the way down through, they flew us down to Atlanta. And even then, they told us, like, look, there's, how many teams were there? 17?
There was
18?
There's more than there.
There was definitely more than that were actually on the show, because they only needed 12. And so they kept telling us throughout the whole time, like, you could possibly go home. And so we had to accept that aspect of saying, well, yeah, we might have to go home. But during that interview process, while we were down there, they're trying to put together a storyline that they wanted Zach and I to live and show on national TV. So that's why I ask you the question, who's telling your story? Because as we were going through the interview process and as we were being asked these different questions, there were times when they were saying, well, you have to wear this specific type outfit. They wanted me to be the Brady Bunch dad. They put Zach in basically Hawaiian type shirts, and it was kind of comical because it was totally against his personality, totally against what he normally is, but they needed to portray a certain demographic. And so as we were going through, we had people that were trying to tell our relationship story. We had the executive producers, the regular producers, we had story producers, we had all kinds of different people that were telling or attempting to tell us how to be able to tell the story while we were on national TV. But Zach and I made a choice. We made a choice that the story that we were going to tell is that you can have a good, healthy father-son relationship. And that was our decision as we stepped in. That was our commitment as we stepped into Lego Masters. And so there were many, many different times that as you go through, you can kind of see, well, we can see it very clearly. They would ask us questions that would be something to the effect of, well, for me specifically, they would say, hey, how do you feel now that you let your son down? I'm like, what are you setting me up for here? This doesn't quite feel right. I mean, something's not there. So they were trying and attempting to get me to tell a story that wasn't true. See, we have a choice as dads to be able to live out, being intentional about what the story is that God has for us and for our families. And so as we're doing this challenge and we're doing these different things, I want you to be aware of that as a dad. As kids, you guys, man, I know you love playing, but there's a lot of lessons that you can learn as you're playing, right? So here's the one clip that we're going to share, and I want to set this clip up a little bit because this is from episode 2. And in this episode 2 here, basically, Zach and I, this was actually, by the way, our favorite build. We had a lot of fun doing this. when they would give us parameters, which is what we're going to do for you guys, they would tell us like, okay, you need to build this, and you have to have this so tall, and you have to have this happen, and that. Anyway, they give us a whole list of rules, and this one was a little bit tough because they had what they call squibs, and it had to blow up. And in blowing up, you had to protect your hero or your guy, and he couldn't fall off. That was part of the rules. They don't ever tell anybody that, but that was part of the rules of what we were trying to do. So I was working on the vials that are on the right and the left side. I kind of worked a little bit on the fence. Zach designed and created the entire back part of the building there. That was really cool. You were really proud of this one.
I was.
But we built all of this, and then as you're going to kind of hear through this video, we had plans on how this was going to work and blow up and have all of these different things happen to it. Didn't quite work out the way that we wanted it to, but we also had a storyline. And so I want you to pay close attention to the storyline, because they're going to go through this and they're going to set it up. And I'm going to do like this evil laugh. And I want you to pay attention to what happens right after the evil laugh, because this is really, really important. This is the story that they are trying to tell. Make sure you pay attention to that. So let's go ahead and play this video, but pay attention to some of these little details here. Our mad monster scientist, Dr. Smurfs, he has been able to successfully steal a little bit of his elixir to be able to turn his monsters into this army that's going to help him to take over for world domination.
I am very confident with our two vials and how they're being flow, but not as confident on the last piece, which is to have the front facing of the factory drop and then a big cow sign over it.
All right, well, I don't know if you guys noticed it or not, but so when he does his little evil laugh, like what he was saying, you know, you can kind of see it pans, like the camera pans over to me, and I kind of look down and I like shake my head. Well, that's not really what happened in that moment. In fact, we actually had this whole script and dialogue plan where I gave this whole long narrative about our Dr. Schmertz. That was our character's name, that's what we gave him. And he had this whole backstory about how he was going to go and steal the chemicals from this evil chemical plant, or this chemical plant, and then he was going to blow it up, so he was the only one in control of these chemicals. And so I was like, I gave this whole backstory about like on a dark, stormy night, blah, blah, blah. And then I pointed to him, and he did his little evil laugh. That was actually cut in from a different point of something that Will, the host, said. So in that moment when I was sitting and watching this show, and then remembering what I actually did in that moment, I learned something very, like as a younger guy, I learned that it is very interesting on the the way that they want to present you as an individual, and the way that like they wanted to present us as a team. They wanted to present us like I was the kid that was like very, you know, oh, he's not cool, he's not hip. I'm like going to try to distance myself. And that was what they were trying, the whole time. They were trying to drive that wedge between the two of us, even in the way that they stitched everything together, the way that they shot it, the questions they asked you, the entire time. And so it was something that my takeaway from that moment was, oh, right, I have to be careful what type of media I consume, because that is the type of thing that you look at and you go, wow, what a like snot-nosed kid. Like, you know, I can't believe he'd do that to his father. Like, you know, he's just trying to be, you know, interesting on TV. And that's not the truth, though, because that's what they wanted you to see. And that's so many times when we're sitting there scrolling on, you know, Facebook or Instagram, we find ourselves like, oh, well, that must be the truth because that's what the media wants us to see. So younger men, being that I'm a younger guy, be careful what you let influence you. Be careful where you watch or what you watch. And then also be careful who you allow influence you. Because like, I wouldn't have been such like a solid individual if it wasn't for the influence of my father and how he taught me up. Because like, that was a trying experience being on Lego Masters. And there was definitely a lot of times where I was just like, dude, I'm done. I want to go home. Like, I was ready. When we actually got kicked off the show, which is actually the next episode, I was done. I was so like, I knew it was like they wanted to get us to fight, and it was like, I was like, but that's just not what I stand for as man, and the only reason I stood for those values and that system is because of the man that came before me. And so as a child, like as a younger man, be very careful who you allow to influence you. But those are my two major takeaways, and that's really something that I want you guys to like focus on, is like when you guys are building, focus on like the influence you allow other people to have on you, and then also take that as a proverb for the rest of your life. Like when there's people that come into your lives, remember who you can actually trust. Remember who you should actually let influence you.
All right, so we're going to do one more quick lesson here. I know we've talked quite a bit, but if you look at, Pastor Don even said this last night, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7 and through 9. I'm not going to go ahead and read that because I know you guys have already read this, but here's my main takeaway for the Deuteronomy 6 thing, is you have to be intentional. You absolutely have to be intentional in what you're doing. If you're not intentional with that, you're not going to teach. You're not going to be able to go and talk and then be able to train your kids and be able to have them walk away with the experience, with the story that God's trying to tell through your life. So you have to be intentional. And in Deuteronomy 6, it has two key elements. So this is for you, dads. Two key elements. Number one is you have to tell them the truth. If you look at the very first part and the first couple of verses, the first part of that verse there in chapter 7, or verse 7 there, it says we have to teach them. That's telling them what's true and what's false. See, when we talk about the story aspect, we talk about who is telling your story. Typically, whether it's society, social media, man, even sometimes just your community, sometimes it's even the friends that you're around. They have a false narrative or a false story that they're trying to tell you to live. So as dads, we have to be able to teach and say this is true and this is false. So that's the very first thing, is teach. The second thing, let me read this here because this is actually really cool. I mean, when truth is most effectively proclaimed through the consistency of words and works. And so it's tying together the aspect of being consistent with your words as well as with your works. All right, so the second lesson that I want you to be able to walk away. So one is make sure that you tell what is true, what is false. The second one is you have to live the lessons with them, which is that second part of that Deuteronomy chapter. When you eat, when you go out, when you walk, create adventures. Create experiences. These shared experiences are what give you the ability to be able to have a good relationship with your kids. And kids, man, you have no idea the value that you have when you can spend time with your dad. I remember as a kid sometimes I really wanted to, and my dad was at work. And I didn't quite get that, but I had to be patient, and I had to kind of wait for his timing. So be patient as kids. As dads, be intentional about what you're doing. The one thing that we did, and this is how our whole experience was created when it came to the Lego Masters, is that I was intentionally building with Zach. I was intentionally working and creating that shared experience. And here's exactly what happened a lot of the time. We would be sitting there building away at something, talking about the weather, talking about whatever else was going on, and then all of a sudden I would get this question. Hey, Dad, what do you think about... And then it was something serious. And that's when it turned. It wasn't right away. We didn't intentionally say we're going to sit down and we're going to look at each other, we're going to have this serious conversation. No, we intentionally did things together, and then the serious conversations happened. So instead of trying to create the serious conversations, look at it and say, how do I create experiences so that we can have those serious conversations? So that the sons are comfortable to be able to ask those questions. Hey, Dad, what do you think about? So as you guys are going to be doing this activity, and as we look at what we're going to be focused on and how we're going to actually do this, I want you as dads to really think about how can I just enhance this experience? How can I create this shared memory that we are going to be able to take with us? Now, this first adventure, this first challenge, let me read that. Yeah, go back that one slide because I do like that quote. I forgot I put it in there. So spiritual and moral principles are best conveyed in the laboratory of life. And that's what I mean by the experiences, right? It's a laboratory of life that we're doing things together as a family. And this is a great outing because this gives you the ability to be able to have that experience with everybody, right? All right, so here's the adventure. Here's your mission. Are you guys ready to start building? You done listening to me? Okay, so about 3 or 4 people are ready to start building. Are you guys ready to start building? Okay, so we got half of everybody now. Maybe I need to make you stand up and run around the table. Everybody stand up, go around the table one time. Everybody stand up. This is sports. You got to do it. Go all the way around the table. Come back to your chair. Come back. There we go. All right, if you have to switch chairs, that's okay too. That's fine. That's totally fine. Okay. All right, we got that little bit of blood flowing again. All right, now let me ask you this question again. Actually, maybe you should ask it. Maybe they'll get a better response.
Your mission is, if you choose to accept it, to build something that represents your favorite Bible story, and there will be follow-up questions. So, some of those questions that you need to start thinking about are, why would you choose that story? What lessons could you be learning or teaching from that story? Why has this story made an impact on your life? And how has this influenced your relationship with God? And honestly, there's a whole slew of more questions we could ask.
All right, so let me give you a couple other little experiential kinds of things. Don't try to build the whole scene.
Nope.
If you try to build the whole scene, you're going to run out of time. Try to build iconic pieces from that scene that represent that scene. So the plan is this. Here's how you're going to do this. First of all, you're going to have a little bit of a conversation on what circumstances, experience, story between the two of you, or the three of you, or however many people there. Have a little bit of a conversation to choose which one you're going to do. And it could be anything, and I always hate giving examples because as soon as I do this, everybody's like, that's the one I'm going to do. Try not to pick that. Okay, maybe if one or two of you do, but try to pick something different, right? So it could be David and Goliath, where David is choosing the stones to be able to throw at Goliath. It could be the burning bush that Moses has, that he has his experience with. It could be Abraham and Isaac. It could be David doing something else as far as within the castle. There's so many, Elijah, Elisha. I could keep going. Paul. I mean, how many different stories are there in the Bible? Peter walking on the water. But build one element of that and use that as a way to be able to talk about the story and then answering these questions. We're going to give you some time at the end to be able to answer some of the questions. Okay, so if you guys run into challenges, in other words, if you can't figure out how to build something, make sure you raise your hand, because Zach and I, we can walk around and we can talk to you guys, maybe give you some tips or help, or if you get stuck on something, I don't want it to be too much of a frustration. Raise your hand, we can come around and maybe help and give some ideas. But I want you to have a good conversation about which story that you're going to choose to build something that represents that story. Are we clear? I got thumbs up all over the place. All right, you guys ready to get going here? You got about 30 minutes or so let's go ahead and get going. Should I give you a countdown like we do on the TV show? Yeah? All right, so we're going to say, basically, I'm going to count it down from 5, and we're going to say go, but then everybody gets to, you have to help me, though. You guys going to help me? All right, we'll go down from 5. Ready? 5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
Go! I know I surprised you with that. I wasn't expecting you to read all these questions, but that's okay.
That's fine. I turned that off just so it's not bumping around.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I can roll the punches. You didn't mention anything about the buckets up here.
Oh.
Probably should mention something